Hello there, my gathered listeners. Today we are off to the breezy Fiddler coastline to the port city of Goosewing Galley, known for their salty, citrusy cuisine and countless world-renowned chefs, where we will hear the tale of Flambe, another would-be chef who wants to make his mark amongst the culinary elite. However, he has one problem. Seafood is not really his forte. He prefers something a bit more off-menu. What it is, you might ask? Well, let's find out together. Crouched behind a makeshift rock formation in a salty cave just off the craggy coastline outside of town sat Flambe, whittling a small stick into the shape of an onion. The lapping waves inched ever closer to his hidden alcove as the rising tide began to take shape, marking the time for him to put away his little project, draw his sword, and wait in silent ambush. For this musty hollow was the home to a nasty crustacean insect-like beast known as the galley's ghost. It roams the shallows when the tide has receded. Harmless enough, but once the flows lead it back to the shores, if it hasn't had its fill, the town and its people were the next best opportunity. But tonight, that would end, and Flambe would have something new to grill over open flame. Not that anyone would give it the time of day, turning their nose up in disgust at his delicacies. But you never know. Just the right mix of spices, maybe a little squeeze of lime, and they might come around to see things his way. The ghost had returned. Tensing every muscle in his body, Flambe listened as the heavy, sloshing footsteps dragged closer. The chittering of its mandibles could barely be heard over the crashing waves. And when its lumbering frame was mere inches away from Flambe, he sprung into action. Bracing himself on the salty wall, he used the leverage to kick out a vicious blow to the back of the ghost's knee. Yelling in surprise at the intruder with garbled anger, it fell onto one arm, swinging the other around wildly to fend off its attacker. But it was too late. Not milliseconds after his blow connected, Flambe sprang from the foaming floor, meeting the ghost eye to eye as it fell. His sword already in motion, it beheaded the monster in one clean sweep. Breathing a sigh of relief, Flambe quickly tied a knot around the cumbersome body and stuffed its heavy head into a satchel. He needed to drag this thing out of here before the tides overtook the cave entirely, and get to dressing, then cooking. Luckily, his camp and food cart was not too far away, with it being just outside of town, as he wasn't allowed to sell inside the market. Mostly because his choice of proteins were, let's just say, a little ahead of his time, and the powers that be were not ready for what he offered. Be that as it may, it did not discourage his entrepreneurship. So using his innate ability and namesake, Flambe got a fire roaring while hauling the carcass up into a tree, and began to work on separating the meat from the thick outer shell. Working well into the night that bled into the morning, he wiped the sweat from his bleary eyes before taking in the peach and rose-colored sky as the sun peeked over the horizon. With no time to waste, he dragged the tarp from his roadside stand, revealing the beautifully hand-painted sign, "The Grand Gourmand, Flambe's finest food." Full of magical compartments that kept his product cold and knives sharpened, well, he placed his carefully sliced meat into each chill drawer. The roaring fire from the night had burnt to embering coals, and he carefully laid them into his grill. Then began preparing an assortment of vegetable pairings for the day's choice of dishes. Chittering fritters, al dente dish of the sea, and monster mash a la mode. By all rights, not only did his cart stand out, was immaculately clean, and offered some truly original tasting dishes, but Flambe himself was also incredibly charismatic when offering a taste of his wares. Unfortunately, like most days, it wasn't enough to win over the crowd shuffling into town to spend their gold at the markets and higher-end restaurants. When a customer was enticed by the effervescent aroma, it didn't take long to find out where the meat came from, which inevitably led to word of mouth spreading like wildfire that all should avoid the monster-peddling miscreant. Dejected, depressed, and defeated once again, Flambe was all but ready to close up shop early and head back to the drawing board, when he heard a little ahem. Standing barely 3 feet tall, an easy-to-miss, small-hooded stranger with a long, protruding white beard stood before the cart. "1 chittering fritter, please, kind sir." And he held out a small gold coin in his green-skinned palm. Offering it on the house for fear of what was to come, Flambe cooked up his best portion yet and handed it to the tiny fellow. And with a few satisfying crunches later, the hooded stranger licked his mustache and nodded. Then proceeded around the cart and beckoned Flambe closer to him. With eyebrow raised, Flambe crossed over and knelt down to eye level, though he could not make out anything distinct beneath the hood as the stranger spoke. "That was delightful. Thank you for the nourishment. Now, before you pack up, I offer you a secret in return." Long story short, he told Flambe of a magical place where his food would not only be most welcome, but his customers would ever be changing. If he was brave enough to turn away from his current path and simply walk in a new direction, he would most definitely find his way to the Gathering Stone. That's it for today, folks, and don't worry, Flambe found his way here, but who could have possibly been that hooded stranger to give away such secrets? My, strange indeed. Well, be sure to come back next week for more tales, characters, and illustrations. Farewell for now.